Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kendra, the author of Unhooked, 40 Days to Breaking the Chains of Addiction. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I came up with this 40-day process and also answering some of your questions that you had yesterday. And so first off, I have been a metaphysical healer and spiritual teacher for the last 7 years. And I have been deep diving into everything about addiction and addiction recovery for the last 12 years. I've experienced a lot of people in my personal life that have been addicted. My father was, I always kind of thought of him as picking an addiction. I know that his family wouldn't like me saying this, but over being a father. And I always wondered why. And so yesterday, somebody had expressed that what is it like for a normal person that doesn't have these experiences where they're, seeing guides and guardians and things of that nature. And I just wanted to address that because it's not about specialness. We are all holy children of God, and we're all walking out this path towards self-actualization. And I feel that when we experience being very different, or we experience a lot of trauma in our childhood, it tends to make us go into the astral realm more often. It makes us not feel so comfortable being in our physical human bodies. And so that's when you'll see people start to either go into, it's like the polarities of Neptune. The polarities of Neptune are, spiritual awakening, having these divine meditations and experiences, and then addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction. And so when a person is experiencing being separated from their tribe, so to speak, they go into the polarities of Neptune, where they're either totally daydreaming, and that those are the children that are sitting in class not listening to the teacher. Maybe they're scribbling something on their paper and they're in a different reality. And then the others who completely check out and go and find, a drug or substance or an activity to self-medicate. And so for me, I really escaped into the etheric realm. And that's why people have what they call like special abilities, or they become masters in certain realms of reality. But it's more about integrating. It's about becoming a whole individual where, we can be. I live in Sedona, Arizona. And if you guys have ever been here, it's like a spiritual mecca on the planet. But there's not, like, especially right now with inflation, there's a lot of very powerful spiritual teachers and beings and guides and guardians that are living out of their car because the cost of living is going up so high. It's very catered to tourism and not really catered to the community. And people aren't grounded, and so it's important for us to not check out of the physical realm because we're ascending, but to be fully embodied and bring that that angelic or that Christ energy into us. And so yesterday somebody also asked, what are the 7 points of liberation, or what are the 7 points in the body where trauma or addiction gets stored? So as we come in, you can think of this as the chakra systems, or you can think of it in psychology as the stages of development. And so you have the root chakra, which is right when we come in, we're babies. If we feel safe, if we feel like we can trust our primary caregivers in order to allow us to blossom, bloom, and flourish and just go and run around and explore this world, then our root chakra will feel safe, and we won't need to self-soothe. We won't need to look for something outside of ourselves to cause us to feel a peace. Hi, it's nice to see you as well. So all of these stages of development, or these chakras, they house trauma, and they can become very open, or they can become very closed or imbalanced. And so if you just look at your life, like, what are some repeat patterns that you experience? Do you get into relationships and you don't feel safe? Or women on this planet, that's something that men, I think, have a hard time understanding, because women are kind of like prey animals. I know that for some of my feminists, they're not going to like that I'm saying this, but we are like prey animals on this planet. Men don't really understand, and I'm not trying to divide the sexes, because we definitely don't need any more of that. We need to positively respect the other sex and allow for that co-creation. It takes a male and a female in order to create life. And if we don't respect that, then we won't have any more human life. So with women, often if you ask a woman if she's ever felt unsafe, she's going to say yes. And if you asked her if she's ever felt unsafe this week, she's going to say yes. And unless she is walking, with a man at 3 a.m. in a back alley in LA, and maybe even then she might still feel unsafe. But men being, I don't see that they experience the same level of unsafety. They might experience, emotional unsafety, but not in the same way as women do. And so it's so primary for a woman to feel safe in her own body, to feel safe in her environment, and for men to understand that, especially if you're in a partnership with a woman and she doesn't feel safe, it's not for you to invalidate her, because it is important for us both to come to this level of understanding one another so that we can all have compassion for each other's experiences. So It's about asking her questions when she's feeling unsafe. What could I do in this moment to make you feel safer? And noticing when we are enabling somebody versus caretaking them, and allowing for each of us to come into greater harmony. And so the 7 points of liberation are when we can truly release those trauma points in all 7 of our stages of development, or our chakra system. What are you most excited about for the future of your writing career? That's a good question. I'm most excited about this process getting out there to the masses. I've had seen, like, we've actually been in talks with a studio about doing like a reality or a docu-series about this, and taking a group through the journey and documenting their experience. I'm really looking forward to something like that, where people can watch the journey. And I believe that when somebody is able to watch somebody else's experience, it takes some of the fear or the hesitation out of it. And so I feel like more people will join in. And I'm excited about writing more books. I'm excited about speaking more, and just really sharing with the world that we don't have to live in this level of um, fragmentation, this level of feeling broken or like something's wrong with us. And we don't have to repeat these trauma cycles. We don't have to keep trauma bonding. And so I really pray that people start to see my book as a toolbox and use it for what it was created for. What is one piece of advice would your past self give to you about writing this book? Would my past self give to me? My past self? That's an interesting question. Probably to enjoy this experience. If myself today was going to talk to my past self, I would have invited her to write it earlier, even though it was all in divine timing. So, why do people become addicted? People become addicted because they feel powerless, they feel alone, and they feel powerless to change this feeling of pain that they're experiencing. And so addiction is just a form of self-soothing. It's when we are, say we're a baby and we're left crying on the floor. And this is funny because when we're left crying on the floor and all we can see is our caregiver's feet, this is what creates feet fetishes. And so when our need for soothing isn't immediately met by our primary caregivers, it makes us start to distrust that it's ever going to be met. And then that causes this seeking nature, and that's what creates addiction. And so, it could be that a child, is stimming, like messing with their hair or sucking on a binky or sucking on their thumb. That's the start of self-soothing. And there's a balance to this, because if they're not experiencing being soothed by their primary caregiver, it's important for their emotional regulation that they find a way to soothe. But if it goes into like a detriment where they need that in order to emotionally regulate, then that's where we get into tricky territory. Unfortunately, with the influence of social media, it can be hard for people to truly feel safe and harmony with their body. Do you mean because people are like putting their best, their like most polished image forward and acting like their life is perfect? I feel like it's also like a perfect time to completely tap out of trying to fit into any type of societal box. I remember when I started my journey of self love, I got to this point where I had hated everything about myself. I remember I was speaking and thinking, God, I don't even like the sound of my own voice, and knowing that there was something not okay about that. And so I intuitively just knew I have to turn this in the other direction. I need to find one thing about myself that I love. And I started this mirror process where I was just staring at myself in the mirror and I was looking like, what is one thing that I can say I love about myself? And at that time, it was my belly button. And so I just stared at my belly button. I just kept growing that love until it was encapsulating all of me. And then I started doing internal work where I would find one thing about my personality that I loved and I would grow that. And I just continued in that direction. And that allowed for me to release, what society wanted me to look like and allowed for me to love who I am. We only see the consequences that that's addiction. We never truly recognize the hardship these individuals go through to fall into victim to addiction. Well, see, even that is like a push away energy. It's not seeing yourself as the addict. It's important for us all to see how we are addicted to something, because then we are allowed to break free from it. But when we just see it as these people and their victims, if you notice, that's a push away energy, that's separation. And I believe separation is the root of all evil. And so it's important that when we feel like, oh, those poor people over there, that we look for that inside of ourselves. And then that helps us to have greater awareness of what created it. It allows for us to heal the addict within us. It allows for us to then, when we do that, we share that consciousness with the world around us. And so, through quantum entanglement, like if you have somebody in your family that struggles with addiction and you can't get them to go to treatment for the life of them, then you could go and walk yourself through this 40-day journey and shift the consciousness within your epigenetics, which heals your lineage forwards and backwards. And then through quantum entanglement, see that consciousness shift and just watch how it ripples when you stop trying to force people from this push away energy of like something's wrong with you and I think that you need to get fixed. When we stop doing that and instead we go inside of ourselves and we heal it within us, it's amazing because then those people around us start to go, what is it that you're doing? I want some of that. Like, that looks good. And then they start to ask you questions, and then you can offer your advice or your support. How do you feel about criticism and feedback from readers and reviewers? Um, well, I love feedback. I haven't gotten criticism. Um, I don't think that criticism is helpful. Feedback definitely is, um, I think, necessary for our growth, though. And so, when somebody has a desire to share feedback from an open heart and a place of desiring to share what would make it better for them, I had somebody that shared with me when they were one of the people that were going over and doing the editing or she didn't really do the editing, but she read over and gave me her perspective. And she was she said she was a recovering addict, and that if she was trying to read this book while she was like like in the midst of her addiction, that it was too wordy and she would have trouble following along. And so then that gave me this inspiration to do the charts that I have in the book. And so she thought that that made it so much easier to read. And it even makes it easier for me to read. So that's why there's charts in the book, and it's broke up so it's not just paragraph after paragraph. What's the worst addiction for you? For me personally, my worst addiction is probably codependency. Yeah, codependency I feel like is the most rampant addiction there is on the planet. It was easy not to fall into people pleasing or the fawn. The fawn instinct, honestly, is probably what I struggle with the most, because the fawn instinct is it it completely blocks you from knowing your own truth, and instead you're just looking at the other person that um, you're trying to make like you in order to keep yourself safe. And you're trying to figure out what they want from you. And it's taken a lot of self-awareness, especially in my current relationship, to realize that you can't have a relationship with anyone if you're not going to show up and be authentic. But it's amazing to notice when these little triggers come up that push us into our survival instincts. And with fawn, you surrender your own truth, and it can come across like manipulation. And if you're doing it from a conscious perspective, where you're trying to manipulate like and hook somebody in order to get something that you want out of them, that's a different energy than the fawn instinct. Because when you're in the your survival instincts, your prefrontal cortex is not activated. Like you have no awareness of what decisions, because when we're in our instincts, it's to save us from, a bear trying to attack us or whatever. So fawn is just as much of a instinct as fight or flight. And what books or authors have had a significant impact on your writing? Well, I haven't really read a lot of books. I was classified as having a learning disability, and but more so, what I would notice is every time I would try to read a book, it's not that bad now, but I would be following along and then I would fall asleep. And then there were so many books that I just like absolutely loved and wanted to read the whole thing. And I'd wake up and the book would be on my face, or I would end up falling asleep with it under my pillow. And what I noticed was that when that would happen, I was retaining the information somehow. It's like I was like in training with the frequency of the book. So, but I feel, who has impacted my writing? I feel like growing up, there was a book called Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. And that book really impacted me. That's actually when I started writing. That's when I got into journalism in my freshman year of high school. And how has researching about menopause changed your perspective on womanhood? Well, I haven't researched anything about menopause and the way we approach women's issues in today's society. Yeah, I haven't researched anything about menopause. I'm not quite there yet. Um, I do feel like menopause is more painful when we've sacrificed our feminine our feminine energy. And so, today in today's society, I see a lot of my clients actually that have bought that lie that they should focus on their career and that they can have children anytime. And then they hit, their 40s and they're, really upset because now they want to have a family and society is telling them it's harder to get pregnant and they can't find a love interest and all of this stuff. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that when we're in the workplace, we're in our masculine energy. And so it's important to have like a practice when we come home to surrender that masculine energy and soften into our feminine. And I feel like that makes the transition more graceful. It becomes more unifying to perceive ourselves as possible addicts, to truly be empathetic to these individuals. We are all addicts. If you've had something to eat today, you are addicted. Um, we rely on grocery stores, which is an addiction. We are addicted to certain styles of relating. We are addicted to fear. We are addicted to, there's so many things. And it's important for us to really understand that it's not an us and them thing. Like it's not some people that struggle with addiction. It's just, some people can be looked at as um, being more far gone, you could say. But if we ever want to truly heal addiction or war or any of the atrocities that we see on this planet, we have to start taking ownership and responsibility and understand that if there's a war in our country or in other nations, there's a war inside of us. And so identifying that war and making peace with those fragmented aspects of us is how we start to co-create harmony within our world and within our planet. And so it's the same thing with addiction. It's like if we took care of our people and we didn't, if it wasn't everybody is out for themselves and in this survival, and we didn't just, let people become homeless, and instead we started to take responsibility for our tribe, start to help people, then people wouldn't um, go to these lengths to try to numb out or self-soothe. How do you approach the challenge of creating a satisfying ending of your books? A satisfying ending. I don't know. I've never thought about that. I guess like leaving it open-ended. Like mm, like letting the reader have the imagination to continue their own story with whatever you're writing about. All right. Is there any more questions? And we didn't really get into how I created this process, so I guess we'll talk about that tomorrow. What social issues does your book address, if any? Well, it addresses addiction. Addiction and separation, which is the biggest social issue. But it also deals with grief. My brother committed suicide as my book went to the editor. And so when I got it back, I knew that I had to put a chapter about grief because grief is one of the main reasons why people go into addiction. And yeah, so I truly feel that right now we have an epidemic of suicide and overdose. And it is up to all of us to create a change, to create healing, and to co-create a better future. So if any of you would like to join me in walking through the 40 days and 40 night freedom challenge, we are beginning on January 26th, which is Friday. And you can go to unhooked40.online to get more information, to book a call with me. And you can also walk through that journey anytime on my website. So that's a wrap, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for all of your questions. Bye, guys.